So our theme this month is non-attachment. Non-attachment. And my topic today is to be of the highest service. To be of the highest service. So I've been sharing a little bit about that spirit definition about non-attachment. And that spirit definition that's come within this new spiritual dictionary that's being downloaded. It says non-attachment is where, remember, all the spiritual qualities aren't just events. They're places and spaces in consciousness where there's a convergence of energy. Okay? It says it's where your desire for certainty. Okay? The Buddhists always say that the root of all our troubles is desire. The attachment. That's where stuff comes from. So the spirit definition says that non-attachment is where your desire for certainty dissipates into my infinite possibilities. Dissipates like the fall. Okay? It just lives. There are infinite possibilities that are there. But we can't discern the infinite possibilities because we're so attached. We're attached to how we think it ought to be. We're even attached to the ideas of what we don't want. Listen to what I just said. We're even attached to the ideas of what we don't want. We get attached to whatever we think. We get attached to whatever we believe. And we get so attached that that becomes us. This becomes the root of our conflicts. Our conflicts are not the differences of opinion. Differences of opinion do not cause conflict. It's polarization around the differences of opinion. It's the way we other around the differences of opinion. So that if you disagree with my opinion, you disagree with me. Disagree with me. And we're struggling with each other, and we can't hear each other because we really want that connectedness. We want that oneness, and we have grown into a society, regardless of how much we say that we celebrate diversity, underneath it all, there's a real fear. This fear that somehow or another, if you are too different than I am, we won't be connected anymore. We won't have the oneness anymore. So, yeah, you can be like a little bit different, but can you be enough like me so that I can still feel connected to you? Can you still be ice cream? Okay. You can be pistachio nut, you know, and you can be pralines and cream, but we at least be ice cream. To be of highest service. I contend that we are first and foremost spiritual beings having a human experience. And that furthermore, the reason why we are on this planet is not for our own ego's gratification. I believe that with my whole heart and soul. That the sole purpose of our being is not just me, my, how can I have as much as I want? You know our whole preamble to the Declaration of Independence with that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? In this society, we have taken that to be really, really individualistic. really individualistic. And I contend that there isn't going to be any real happiness outside of the concept of the fulfillment of a beloved community. Because if you amass all this wealth and you all that, and everything around you is abject poverty, I think you're going to have a problem. I do. Call me crazy, but we're all in this together. It reminds me of this image that I first saw in the Awakening the Dreamer trainers of the Pachamama Alliance. I'm on their board of directors. It's a sketch, and it has this boat. It's like a rowboat, more like a canoe, big canoe. And it's tilted so that it is sinking. And you can clearly see there is a hole in the bottom of the canoe. And there are some people who are there at the bottom part bailing out the water, and there are other people who are sitting at the top looking down at the people at the other end of the boat who are bailing out the water. And the caption comes from the people at the top. And the caption says, "I'm so glad the hole's not on our side of the boat." There's a lot of that kind of consciousness going on. I'm so glad that, you know, we're safe and we're saved. And and the hole is on our side of the boat. To be of the highest service. The highest service. Whenever people come to me and they ask me about their life's purpose, particularly when it comes to employment or how they're going to use their time or what is it that they're going to do, so many people are really stressing out on trying to figure out the what. They want to be like really clear. What is it that I should be doing? And what I would always say to them is step back for a moment. Don't get so stuck on the specific what. Like in a practical sense of just a particular activity. Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What kind of contribution do you want to make to the world? What's calling out in your heart? What do you want? Do you want flexibility? Do you want collaboration? Do you want unlimited opportunity? Do you want to be able to work, with people? Do you want more isolated time? Do you want to be able to travel? It's like, qualitatively speaking, what do you want? Okay? Do you want to work with children? Do you want to make a contribution to environmental social justice? What do you want, like at your soul's level? Okay? And open up wide, pray and meditate about it. Say, great universe, use me. I am here. I am here for something that's so much greater than I am. And let me tell you, the opportunities that are there for you, you can't see. You don't know. You don't know. And most of us are waiting to see the opportunities before we dare to dream large, but it's the other way around. The energy of your large dream will attract the opportunities. We don't want to dream till I have the opportunity. But it's the other way around. It's the other way around. The vibration of your passion will bring into your experience other people who are moving in the same direction. Things that are being created now that actually didn't even exist 3 months ago, 4, 5 months ago. Do I have any witnesses in the house? Be about something bigger than you. Be about something bigger than you. There is a higher good. Now, what that means is that sometimes your ego is going to have to take a back seat for the higher good. Your ego may not always get what it wants if you surrender to the higher good. You may not get that apology that you're waiting for if you surrender to the higher good and move into forgiveness before there is an apology, or regardless of if there is ever an apology. When you move to the place of the higher good, which is beyond the competitiveness that may be going on with you and whatever, you and your siblings, or you or other people at your job. When you get into the idea of that which is for the higher good, there are synergies that take place. I'm thinking right now of an event that I love here in Santa Cruz. And it's put on by the Homeless Services Group. And it's this event where soup is on. It's this kind of metaphor of people standing in soup lines. Okay. So what happens here is that dozens of restaurants in Santa Cruz contribute pots of soup. It's at the Civic. People come, they pay so much money, and you get soup and bread. Now, the names of the restaurants are all there. So you get a chance to sample this great soup. And then they have what they call celebrity servers. So I usually get this invitation every year that basically says, "You're so well loved and liked in Santa Cruz, will you serve soup?" So, you know, you're next to the mayor and the council people and the other clergy, like, you know, all the chancellor, whatever. We're all serving soup. Okay, are you with me? Put aside. They put aside. All of us put aside. Whether you're from this church or that church, this restaurant, that restaurant. And they're all donating the soup. Are you with me? And there becomes a win-win. Because by collaborating with their so-called competitors, there's actually more exposure to all of the restaurants. To all of them. By not being so attached. Just me, my restaurant, what I want, my customers. No, I'm willing to stand into this milieu that's happening here of greater good and greater service. And there becomes a win-win for everybody. A win-win for everybody. You hear this phrase sometimes about a world that works for everyone. And I know I struggled with that some, because I was still on that mindset of the individual pursuit of happiness, and like, how's this going to work? Anybody of you ever questioned that? World that works for everyone? And as I prayed about it, started to get these revelations. And I was told to think of it more like a family. So let's say you have a family vacation that's coming up. You have a 5-year-old, you have a 15-year-old, you've got a 45-year-old parent, okay, and a 70-year-old grandparent that's going to come along to chaperone and take care of the kids. Okay? 5, 15, 45, and 70. And they're all trying to figure out a vacation. Okay? Now, you can imagine any of those specific age groups, if they had their own individual vacation, what that might look like. Right? But there is a vacation. There is a possible vacation that has something for everyone. Listen to that difference. an empowered world that works for everyone, an empowered world that has something for everyone so that no one need be sacrificed so the other people can have. That's different than a world where each and every person gets to consume to their maximum of their own individual pursuit of happiness, but a world that works for everyone, so that if we all take a look at this and say, where can we go? How can we do this so that nobody is left behind and that there is something that is available for everyone, we can do this. See, that is to be of the highest service. Okay? Now, 70-year-old grandparent gets a chance to do 70-year-old things sometimes. 45-year-old gets to do 45 and the 5 and the 15. We're not saying you got to give up your life, but to have this vacation, can there be something besides just what you want? Are you with me? So I had this epiphany this morning. And this is my first time characterizing it as this, and I'm giving this caveat because I reserve the right to refine it. In case when I listen back at this, it didn't quite hit it. But I want you to hear the spirit of it. So the Spirit voice was talking to me this morning about the difference between a right, an entitlement, and a privilege. Between a right, an entitlement, and a privilege. And trust me, this really does have to do with being of the highest service. And what it's explaining was that a right is this kind of package of things that are yours. Okay? It is a right. But don't pay so much attention to the yours. The right is more the collection of things, whether it's the resources, the particular ways of doing things, that the right is no respecter of persons. It's like the right just exists. It'd be like the right to vote. There is such a thing called voting. And it doesn't care about who's in it or who's not in it, but voting itself means certain things. That you can register your opinion, that your opinion matters, that these votes are going to be tallied with these other votes and the majority of votes. See, there's this thing called voting. Are you with me? It's like that would be it. There's like a right. The entitlement part comes to who is given the opportunity, the prerogative to participate in that right. Okay? So entitlement starts to bring the people into it. The right is just that activity that exists. Now, who's entitled? Who has the prerogative? Who can do that or who can't do that? And sometimes we have these entitlements that aren't just for everybody, that there are qualifiers and there are criteria that have to be there in order for you to have the entitlement to exercise that particular right. So if we were to stay on voting, for example, there's this thing called voting, but then an entitlement might be, well, here, you have to be a U.S. citizen, you have to be 18 years old, you have to have registered, these particular things. But like if you do those things, and once again, it's a prerogative, you don't have to exercise that right, but you are entitled to it. Equally entitled to it if you do all the criteria or you have all the criteria. Then there's this thing called privilege, which ups the ante one more notch. And what the privilege has to do with is how accessible is it for you to exercise that prerogative, for that right. Okay? So the privilege has to do with how things are constructed to make it convenient for you to be able to have these prerogatives and do these things. And not all privileges are based upon rights. Okay? There is this thing called privilege, but it works the same way. How easy is it? So say, for example, if we stick with this voting thing, privilege would be things like there are polls that you can actually get to. There are not armed guards that are soldiers that are stopping you on the way to the polls. That you actually get a ballot ahead of time and know what's going on. You can vote early. You could register online. You could vote absentee. Are you with me? Do you get what I'm saying? These are all privileges. Okay? There are a lot of countries that have voting, but they don't have these kind of privileges. Okay? They don't have this kind of access that I'm talking about here. Are you with me? Okay. And the thing is about privilege is that most of us don't see it. The way that things have been structured for us, we don't even see it. We just kind of take it for granted because it's there. To be of the highest service. I contend that if you have the entitlement in the United States to vote, that you should exercise your privilege to do so. This is a very contentious election. And I know there are a lot of people who are very disheartened at the choices and that their particular candidate, whomever that was, Republican, Democratic, Independents, whatever, isn't on the final ballot now. And for some people, there's a part of them that's saying, the real choice that I want isn't there, so I'm not going to vote at all. I am not going to exercise this entitlement that I have to vote. I'm going to ask you to rethink that. I'm going to ask you to rethink that. I'm talking about the world that works for everyone. And the United States has an undue influence on the world. The world's watching us in this election. And here's what you do. You go to that place of the highest good, the highest contribution, where it may not be exactly what you want, but what's the highest thing that you can do in that moment to at least kind of start to get you in that direction. Vision can't be attached to personalities. Principles before personalities. So I'm a boomer. And I remember how devastated I was when Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. Just a few miles from my home while I'm doing a report on him. Devastated. Doubly devastated because Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated less than 90 days before. And just a couple of years before that, Malcolm X. And just a few years before that, Robert Kennedy, the president. That was 4 and 5 years. It was devastating. These were young. These were like our heroes. Are you with me? I understand what it means to have like a lot of attachment, but you keep on marching anyway. You keep on marching anyway. Martin Luther King said, look, quoting Moses, I may not make it to the promised land, but I've seen it. You keep on marching. You do whatever you can to be the highest. I remember in my own life, I had been part of those that was doing domestic partnerships in corporate environments and getting that up. But I didn't believe in domestic partnerships from a political standpoint. I thought it was second-class citizenship. And I got approached by my legal eagles, my friends in the movement, that asked Valerie Joy and me to sign on the class action. It wasn't a class action suit. There was a class action suit that was against Gray Davis, who had been recalled here in California out of the governor's office. And one of the last things he did on his way out, it was a true flip the bird, he instated domestic partnership for the state of California. So this was in defense of us being able to retain. So he was being sued, but in order for there to be a lawsuit, there have to be real people that can really be hurt. So Valerie Joy and I were asked to come on as co-defendants with Gray Davis. I don't often talk about this one, but I have two precedents in the history books. So it won. And what convinced me was when they said, this is a step towards marriage equality. We got to have this one first. And I'm like, but I don't want this. I don't want second-class citizenship. But they're like, Deborah, there's a higher good. If you just set it aside for a moment and not get stuck like in the logistics, if you have a real vision of equality, keep moving towards that, even if it's not the big one that you want first. See, now don't misunderstand here. This idea about the right to marry, the freedom to marry, this wasn't a bunch of couples who were coming forth and saying, oh, we're going to sit here and wait till the law comes around and gives us the permission to be in these relationships. Oh, no. What the cases were people who were already in these relationships for years, challenging the supremacy, saying, why aren't our relationships just as good? Claiming that our marriages now are marriages. That's what they were claiming. See, Jesus talked about the difference between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. And what they were saying was, just because we don't have the papers doesn't mean that what we have is any less. Are you with me? This is where I think we miss it on the argument about undocumented workers. When you hear the immigration argument, it makes it seem like we're making this decision about whether all these people should be able to come into the United States. But this is just like marriage equality. They're here. They're already doing it. It's like whatever that litmus test would be to give you the entitlement, like whatever that would be, they are already doing everything that we would want a citizen to do. I just signed on a document in a petition that the Romero Institute sent me. I was outraged to find out that we are deporting veterans from active combat because they are undocumented. That somehow or another the paperwork didn't get filed right when they enlisted, applying for citizenship as they enlisted. And we're going to deport people who've done combat in American uniforms over the letter of the law? There is a spirit of the law that trumps every single time. What is for the highest good? What's for the highest good? Is that really going to serve us? To deport people who have been serving and contributing? Is that really going to serve us? Is that going to be the highest good? I don't think so. I don't think so. It isn't papers that make you something, it's consciousness. It's your work. It's who you are. A lot of us are living our life on hold because we don't have the papers to do this or that. Just do it. Just do it. Now, I'm not saying go out and operate on somebody without a license. But what I'm saying is that if your calling is to be a healer, then use the power that God gave you. You may not have a degree. I had the honor and the privilege of being the MC for Maya Angelou when she was here, when Pulse Productions brought her in. And I was doing her bio, and the city asked me to write the proclamation for her. That's one of the biggest honors of my life. She had 27 honorary doctorates. And you know what? She never went to college. Maya Angelou never went to college. And you can say, what gives you the right to be the poet laureate and to have all these professorships at all these different universities? Because I am. Because I am. Are you with me? Because I am. Stand in your I amness for a higher purpose and a higher service without attachments, without a whole bunch of attachments to what that's got to look like. There are possibilities that we can't even imagine because we're so attached to what has been or the way that it looks. Or heaven forbid, you haven't waited your turn for your entitlement. We get that kind of fraternity, sorority hazing mentality. Like you got to be harassed a certain amount before we'll let you in. There's something bigger. There's something greater. Can't you hear the call? Can't you hear it? There is something in life that is calling us up for a higher purpose. And for all of this talk about the divisiveness that's going on politically right now, yes, this is true. We can see that. But you know what else? I have never, ever, ever seen so much bipartisan visioning before in my life. I'm not telling you which way to vote. I'm saying just vote. I am astounded. And I'm just using this analogy because it is a frame of reference that's relevant and happening now. When I look at the hundreds of staunch Republicans, it looks like almost the whole cabinet of George W. We're talking from Henry Kissinger, like on up and down, who are speaking out their conscience of a vision and who are saying that there is a higher purpose and that they are committed to a higher good more more than they are committed to party identity. Can everybody stand there? Everybody. The Bernie folks, can you stand there? Can you say, I am committed to a higher vision? I am committed to something higher than my candidate, than my identity with my candidate. Or whether you were for, Santorian or anybody else. But can you stand? I've never seen anything like this. Honestly, I have never seen so much people coming out in different sides of the parties and saying, you know what? This isn't going down the way I would want it to go down. The candidate that's running is not really the one that's representing me the most. On both sides. But struggling with the fact that I matter. My vote matters. Newsflash. There is an election going on every moment of every day. You are voting every moment of every day. Your thought is energy. You are casting a vote every moment of every day. You are voting for something. However you are directing your energy is a vote. And when like energies come together, it multiplies. And there is something that happens. Can you have less attachment to who's going your way? Can you have less attachment to what it has to look like? The who fors and the whys and the wheres. You will find sometimes that there are such unlikely people who are going in the exact same direction. Because what I know is that underneath it all, human beings are really basic. Underneath it all, we really just kind of want all the same thing. We want to be safe. We want to feel secure. We want our children to grow up and have all the opportunities they can have. We want to live somewhere. We want to love. We want to make a difference. We want to have a job, some kind of career. Underneath it all, we play, we dance, we eat, we make music, we celebrate life. And what I know is that non-attachment is where your desire for certainty dissipates into infinite possibilities. If we can release that I want to know and I want to be absolutely sure I'm going to win. I want to know and I want to be absolutely sure that at the end it's going to work out this way. I'm willing to work with you if I know it's going to work out this way. If we can step back into a huge divine order and say, use me for a higher good, I promise you that eyes have not seen nor ears heard the glory that is here for us as a people. If we have the courage to dare, the courage to dare to live the spirit of our values and our dreams and not be so attached to the letter of the law all the time. This is what I know. Take a breath. Let us pray.